Good evening. Good evening. Yes, spooky time. Good evening out there in computer land. You know, okay, side note. I kind of always thought of like the internet as just being like a series of tubes that just shoot like beams of light through them. You feel me? Anyone else have that like delusion or just that, I guess, that mental tick? You just imagine the internet existing like in a bunch of tubes instead of like a totally non-physical set of vibrations. Yeah, so I'm shooting through the tube right now, shooting into the tube, right into your ear hole. Your eardrum is vibrating, and you hear my beautiful voice. And you're going, oh, wow, give me more. Keep talking about nothing. Please. Please keep talking about nothing. Oh, I will. I will never stop talking about nothing. Except for briefly here for about an hour, I'm going to talk about something. And that something is hypnosis. The history of hypnosis. And yes, basically its origin story, the guy who created it, who accidentally created it, I might add. And then we're going to hear from Liam, good friend of mine, Liam. He's been around in my life for I don't even know, a very long time. And yeah, so we talk about hypnosis, a little bit about astral projection, remote viewing, and yeah, just overall fun, goofy times. So today on Family Recipe Radio, you are going to learn history. I tricked your ass into going to history class. So you can't get away anymore. So you may as well buckle the fuck up right now. Here we go. The history, the origin of modern hypnosis. Today's story, it's a bit of a history lesson. We're going to get into the topic of hypnosis. Whoa. Yes, hypnosis. Fascinating topic. You can trust me with that skill. So basically, I was, let's call it, researching, being the chronically online researcher that I am. I decided to look into neuro-linguistic programming to see if there's any merit to it at all. Because It's one of those things that kind of has been bouncing around conspiracy communities for a long time because of the MK Ultra experiments. Supposedly, the idea of neuro-linguistic programming is a type of hypnosis that implants commands and new skills into your mind, essentially. Like, think The Matrix, like, he can just download how to do kung fu into his brain. Basically, neuro-linguistic programming is kind of like that, in theory. You hypnotize somebody, give them a mission, give them new skills, you wipe their memory, except you have an activation phrase, right? So you can say something like, wow, the moon is pretty, or any phrase, really, and then they'll just snap into action and be the ultimate assassin for you. And then after the mission is over, they won't remember at all. So, pretty cool, right? And it turns out, I don't know, I couldn't really find, let's say, it was inconclusive. My research was inconclusive, as it often is. But all of a sudden, in the middle of this, I was like, I don't even know where hypnosis came from. You'd think I would know this. You'd think a lot of people would know this by now because hypnosis is very ubiquitous in pop culture. So I was kind of surprised at my own ignorance, right? Which, that is often the case as well. It's surprising the amount of things I really, really, really don't know. You'd think, given my large forehead, I would have a huge brain in there, but that's debatable. So anyway, I was like, wow, hypnotism. What's the deal? What's the deal with it? Where does it come from? So I decided to redirect my my researching to something more concrete called human history. And I found out that hypnotism actually, as you can imagine, it has a very, very fascinating backstory. And it turns out that what we know as hypnosis was essentially created accidentally, or it was basically stumbled upon by the psychological community in the late 1700s. And it was all because of a guy named Franz Anton Mesmer. So, with that, here we go. The birth of hypnosis. So Franz Mesmer, he was born in 1734 in a small village called Isnang in Germany. He would grow up to be a very charismatic, stylish, and theatrical man. But as a child, he was said to be very quiet, very introspective, and just naturally kind of in tune with himself. He had a very deep love for nature, specifically for water. He was very drawn to water, which will come back later. So, his parents, who were they? Who created this guy? His father was a game warden. He was described as being very religious. And his mother, I couldn't tell if she had a job, but I did find out that she was a daughter of a locksmith, which, I don't know, there seems to be a little bit of ingrained symbolism with the game warden, the locksmith coming together. I don't know how exactly to articulate that, but I just feel like there's something kind of fitting about the mechanics of opening the doors of the mind mixed with a love for nature. As you can imagine, this being many, many years ago, 1734 was quite a long time ago, I'm told, so there's not a whole lot about his early life. Basically, the story picks up when he goes to school in Vienna. He attended the University of Vienna, and he decided to study medicine. He was going to go for philosophy or religious studies, but he decided, I'll be a doctor instead. So he went through school, and in 1766, he graduated college. His dissertation was about the effects of the different planets on the corresponding parts of the human body. So he was very into astronomy and astrology. There wasn't a huge delineation back then. Anyway, so medicine combined with the stars. he was already getting into this kind of stuff. He was naturally drawn towards astronomy. And unfortunately, now, with hindsight, we can tell that he basically plagiarized all of his work from a guy named Richard Meade. But I think at the time, there's no way to check, so they said, all right, Mesmer, come on in, you can work on the faculty. So he joined the medical faculty in the following year, in 1767. He then married a very rich widow. She had a massive inheritance, so he was set. All he had to do was hang out, basically, and he was said to really like his creature comforts and his leisure time. Basically, his life at this point just consisted of throwing these elaborate, lavish parties at his and his wife's estate, and that was it, basically. So, fun fact, though, also. He was said to be a lover of music, and he hosted a young Mozart at his parties, which I think is kind of fun. Also, fun fact, he was very good at playing the glass harmonica, which is a strange little instrument that sounds like this. Yeah, just that's ghost music right there, straight up ghost music. So anyway, life was going along perfectly fine for Mesmer, and then one day he threw one too many parties, he bought one too many expensive silk gowns, and his wife, Maria, was pressuring him to stop stealing her money, essentially, because he didn't have the best paying job. She had a massive inheritance, and her parents, I believe, were kind of pressuring Mesmer through her to stop bleeding them dry, which is fair, very fair. He had expensive tastes. So Maria, his wife, said, no more partying until you get an actual career going for yourself. So Mesmer was like, oh my God, I gotta figure something out because I need to keep chillin'. I need to keep having these parties in Germany with Mozart. So, basically, the impetus for all of this entire psychological discipline, basically came from a guy who just wanted a quick, easy fix for money. So Mesmer, what are you going to do, buddy? What are you going to do? You don't have much time. I'm assuming there's some kind of deadline. If you're not going to get a job, a real job, you might get booted out by your wife. So during his time at the medical faculty, he encountered the work of this astronomer and Jesuit priest named Maximilian Hell. Fun name for a priest. So Maximilian Hell, he was an early practitioner of magnet therapy, which is, putting magnets on your body to heal you. Yes, they were trying a lot of stuff back then. It was a very interesting time period. There was lots of people coming out with big theories about the world and being like, aha, I have the theory of everything. It was a very creative time period. Anyway, so Mesmer was drawn to the work of this guy, Maximilian Hell. He appreciated that he was also an astronomer, like Mesmer. He was fascinated by the magnet aspect of things, so he got his little Mesmer brain ticking there, and he was like, all right, this is kicking some things into gear for me. I can work with this. I can roll with this. So Mesmer took these early astronomical ideas, magnet therapy, and his own inclinations toward medicine and healing. He mixed them all together, and from that, he formed his theory. He called it animal magnetism. So basically, it goes like this. There exists all around us, flowing down from the stars through our bodies, an invisible web of magnetic fluid that connects all life on Earth together. And this web of fluid can be manipulated in order to affect the physical body or the mind. Think like in Donnie Darko, there's the scene in the kitchen where everyone has that gloopy kind of worm thing protruding from their chest. That's basically Mesmer's theory, and he thought, I can figure out how to manipulate this fluid, this life force that flows through everybody, and I can heal people that way. Pretty solid theory. In a way, I mean, I kind of agree with Mesmer to a certain extent. I do believe there is some kind of life force energy out there that can be collected or manipulated. I'm just not sure if it can be done with magnets like he was theorizing. So, Mesmer, he had to test his theory, like any good scientist. So, through his job at the medical faculty in the University of Vienna, he recruited some students and non-students alike to do some early experiments on him, and his earliest documented success, the thing that kind of pushed him into the public eye, was a patient named Franziska Osterlin. She suffered from a lot of mental and physical ailments, but mainly what he was doing was trying to treat her hysteria. I know, outdated term, but that's what they called it. It could have been any number of things, but he was like, you've got hysteria. I can fix that with my magnets. So get on this table now. I'm going to zap you, and you're going to be feeling right as rain, honey. It'll be all right. So what he did, he prepared a solution containing iron, which I imagine was probably just water and iron. So he said, all right, Franziska, drink this water and iron, lay down on this table. And then he got some magnets, directed them all around her body. And lo and behold, apparently she could feel something flowing through her body, something that he was seemingly controlling. Apparently afterwards, she was temporarily cured. She felt a lot better, more stable. So, Mesmer, he had apparently struck gold. He was riding the high of his first success. He was like, I cannot believe I figured this out. I just invented a whole new thing. So, that night, he meditated on his practice a little bit, and he was like, you know what? I don't think I actually need the magnets. I think that I am the magnet here. I think that my understanding of animal magnetism, my understanding of this fluid that surrounds every person and animal on Earth is so deep, and I have such a strong level of control over it that I can just use my hands, because I'm Franz Mesmer, and I'm amazing, and I just cracked the code, so what's stopping me? Why shouldn't I use my hands? So, what is a 1770s scientist, astronomer, doctor gonna do when they have a new theory? They're gonna go on tour. So basically, he started throwing these live demonstrations, and I don't even want to say demonstrations. They're more like live shows, because they had a very exciting atmosphere. He would go up on stage, very sharply dressed. I've mentioned that a lot, I know, but I do think that's very important, because he has kind of like a stage magician vibe to him. He's very, very snazzy. He's got something. He's got some kind of X factor. So basically, he'd show up on stage with someone who had some kind of illness or problem. He would direct his hands all around their body, which would cause them to have basically meltdowns. They would flail around on the floor while he stood over them, gesticulating with his hands. Very exorcism-like in a way, but him being a scientist, he had to come up with a new term for it, so he called this state, this kind of meltdown state that these people would go into, he called it a mesmeric crisis. So people really, really enjoyed this. They were very fascinated by it. I think half the people were genuinely interested from a scientific standpoint, and the other half were just like, yeah, Mesmer, yeah, let's go. So he became really, really popular. So he started traveling all around what was then the Habsburg Empire, doing these demonstrations, and he was feeling very confident. So confident, in fact, that he decided to embark on the largest challenge of his career: curing blindness. So he had been approached by this 17-year-old girl named Maria Theresa. She was a harpsichord player, and I think he took a liking to her because he was a music lover. So he was like, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to cure your blindness. So he took her up on stage. He did his whole spiel, waving his hands all around her. And, of course, he failed to cure her blindness. So this was a massive issue. People really did not like this. They felt like they had been scammed. And also, there was a feeling of outrage because he was giving people false hope. So this was a massive mark on his reputation, and basically he was forced to flee Germany. That's how bad it was. He had no hope of ever making it big in Germany, so he packed his things, abandoning his wife, and he set off for Paris, France. Also, he had a bunch of patients that still trusted him and believed him, but he just pawned him off on his wife. He was like, you take him. I gotta go to France and become a superstar magician scientist, so I'll see you maybe not, maybe, I don't know. As far as I could tell, he didn't really ever see his wife again. So he arrives in Paris in 1778. And of course, you could totally just reinvent yourself back then, so he immediately sets up a clinic, and this healing clinic became basically an overnight success. And he had enough money from doing this that he was able to set up more of these all around Paris. He had a whole crew of employees. He was very successful. So if you were to go into one of these places, he had it really decked out. He had this atmosphere completely nailed. The curtains were always drawn. There was colorful rugs on the ground. There was astronomical charts all over the wall. And the whole place just had this very mystical, magical air. So if we're talking hypnotism here, I mean, that's step one all the way. You're already put into a suggestive state as soon as you walk in the door. Because I don't think many places like this were around. So you would walk in and immediately just be taken aback, and people would abandon all logic, I think, immediately. So, what was it like? Let's say you go in to have a healing session with Mesmer. What would it be like? So there was a couple options. You could go in as a group or a one-on-one. Okay, so the group healing session went like this. There was a large basin in every one of these salons he had established. In the basin was a mixture of water, colored glass, pieces of metal, and out of the basin, from the water, there was several iron rods that they protruded from the basin. And so what you would do, you would gather around the basin in a circle, you would grab hands with people, and then he would wrap a rope around you guys, and you would touch your chest to one of these iron rods. And basically Mesmer would walk around and kind of do Reiki, similar to Reiki. He would direct his hands all over your body. He would either use his hands or he would use an iron wand. And I don't really know how he decided whether or not to use the rod or the hands. I don't know. Maybe it was just a day-by-day thing, or maybe he went by the vibe of the people. Maybe if you seemed like you needed a little more pomp and circumstance, I guess he would go for the wand, but sometimes maybe he would just say, yeah, this guy's a hand guy. He doesn't need any more convincing. He knows I'm a wizard already. So anyway, if you were in for a one-on-one, basically you would sit in a chair and he would sit in a chair right across from you. You would put your knees together and then he'd put his knees on the outside of your knees and like squeeze your legs a little bit, staring into your eyes, piercing your soul, and he would again take his hands, wave them around your body, and that was that. So this kind of exorcism state that people would go into, that he named a mesmeric crisis. It was so common, it would basically happen every time So there was separate little rooms outside of the main healing area with the basin that had mattresses on the ground. So if you started jerking around and basically having a seizure, he'd just kind of put you in a room for a while and just leave you there, let you flail around on the ground until you felt better. Which, I don't know, it's kind of funny. I guess it's nice of him. He could have just let you do it on the floor, like I assume he was doing in his live shows. Anyway, so business was booming for Mesmer and his whole team of people. In fact, there was usually so much of a demand that he wasn't even able to see everyone in a day. So what he did, I like this. I like this guy. I like his style. Basically what he did, he went to a nearby tree in the town square, and in front of a small group of people, he basically did his animal magnetism healing technique on the tree, and he was like, all right, if you ever really need me and I'm busy, just go touch the tree. Just touch the tree. That's all you need, I promise. Yeah. I'm busy. Touch the tree. So, despite this success, Mesmer, he wanted to go legit, because right now he's still kind of in the world of, he's in the world of faith healing, I guess you would say. Yeah, this is a sort of a faith healing type activity, but he wanted to go legit. He set out to approach the upper scientific community in Paris. In these meetings with these French scientific government officials, they had mixed reviews, to say the least. He asked for the Academy of Sciences, the Society of Medicine, and the Faculty of Medicine in Paris to officially endorse him and his theory of animal magnetism. So the director of the Academy of Sciences invited him to the headquarters for a meeting, and he hosted a live demonstration. And so Mesmer, he was in front of this panel of people, and he was like, yes, I'm going to kill it. I've done this so many times, and it's all gone perfectly fine, except for that one time I was literally chased away from my home and abandoned my family. But whatever, I was going to abandon them anyway, so no big deal. Also, that's never going to happen again. I'm just going to crush it every day for the rest of my life, because I'm Franz Mesmer. So, he was very disappointed because everybody just stared at him blankly for a few seconds, and then they all burst out laughing, which, tough luck for Mesmer. Although it wasn't a total loss, there was a chemist that initially was totally on board named Claude Louis Berthollet. He joined Mesmer's little society called the Universal Harmony Society, and kind of shadowed him, watched him doing all of these healings and stuff, watched the inner workings of this society, and after 2 probably extremely confusing weeks, this chemist stormed out in the middle of a healing session, yelling that Mesmer was a fraud. So, in the end, sadly, nobody in the scientific community in France was sold. So, this disastrous pitch meeting that he had was actually a huge problem for Mesmer. I mean, he had already brought a lot of attention onto himself because of his extremely popular practice, but now he had actually exposed himself and made direct contact with government officials. And his ideas were, for the first time, being scrutinized heavily in a serious scientific manner. This had never happened before, so big moment of truth for Mesmer. Are his ideas gonna hold up under the harsh minds of French scientists? The answer is kind of, but not really. So, the foundation of his theory that there is this invisible, weightless fluid connecting all life on Earth was being viewed with a little bit of skepticism, as you can imagine. So the question was being asked, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe there is this fluid that you can manipulate that provides life force for all animals on Earth, but why can't we measure it? Why is there literally no evidence of this? It seems to be that the only odd thing in this whole scenario is you, Mesmer. You seem to be the thing here that we need to look into the most. But to this, Mesmer, he doubled down and basically said, well, there's plenty of things we can't see, right? Like magnets are real. We all know magnets are real, but we can't see the force they exert on metal. So is that fake? Are magnets fake? Huh, bro? Like, how are you going to beat that argument? And anyway, we don't even fully know what the senses are, so don't come at me with this, my magnetic fluid is fake, bunch of haters, disbelievers, naysayers, not believing in the magnetic juice theory. So he took his theory a step further, and he was like, the reason we can't measure it is because it's the basis of all sensation itself. Basically, the way I understand this argument is like this. So Mesmer was claiming, you can't measure it because this fluid is the basis for our senses themselves, right? Everything we experience in the world, every thought we have is all thanks to the magnetic fluid. So since it surrounds us and is a part of us, data from the external world, such as mass and light and heat, before it reaches us, it touches the magnetic fluid. And therefore, this data is transferred into our nerves from the fluid and, by extension, into our minds, right? So that's how we perceive anything. So that was his argument. That was him trying to wriggle out of the fact that there's really not any evidence for the magnetic fluid. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense. I tried to make it make sense. It's kind of hurting my brain because I think it seems like it was a last-ditch effort to try to throw people off or do some flimflammery, some mental he was trying to do a Jedi mind trick basically on these scientists. But unfortunately, this Jedi mind trick he tried to pull, it didn't really work. However, there was, I do think, a small part of the scientific community that had a genuine interest in his theory itself. But the thing that really interested them was the behavior of his patients. This is what everything has been leading up to. Everything has been boiled down into this moment of the scientific community looking at these patients and thinking something is going on with these people. Something very intense is happening to them. We don't know what it is. We don't know if Mesmer is actually correct. We have a feeling he's not correct. But whether his theory is correct or not, he is clearly doing something to these people. They're having this massive reaction, and people are so drawn to him, and people believe in this so much. So in order to investigate what was going on, how he was causing this, the French Royal Commission on Animal Magnetism was formed. It was made up of a lot of the most accomplished scientific figures in France, and, funnily enough, Benjamin Franklin, all the way in the great U.S. of A., he was included too. He was the only foreign scientist. So, in order to test the theory of animal magnetism, they had to do a blinded study, which, this is kind of wild, this was the first actual recorded use of a blinded study. So they literally would blindfold people, reproduce Mesmer's healing ritual, and compare it to people who were not blindfolded, and lo and behold, as you can expect, people only entered these trance states if they were expecting the animal magnetism to be directed at them. People only entered the trance states if they believed it was going to happen. People only entered the trance if they observed Mesmer's mannerisms, if they were in his environment, if they saw the cool posters on the wall, they saw the basin in front of them, they saw his snazzy outfits, they got the whole vibe. So this was, for the first time, this massive box was opened to the mind's true power. This was the first time that they actually had in writing evidence of the power of the mind over the body, and the power of suggestion, the power of what would one day become hypnosis. Absolutely crazy. So in the end, it wasn't investigating the theory of animal magnetism itself, but it was the investigation of Mesmer's patients that would one day blossom into hypnosis. So that is the story of Franz Mesmer. And of course, the story of hypnosis doesn't end here. The next most consequential figure in hypnosis was this guy named James Bard, and he broke it down and made a far more, let's say, methodical approach to hypnosis. He kind of started turning it into a more hard science or actual psychological discipline. But yes, that's all for today's history lesson. So now we're going to hear from Liam, who's had a little bit of experience with hypnosis or a similar kind of trance state that he used for some therapeutic purposes, and he used to uncover some lost memories, which I think is interesting. So we talk about that, and then we talk about general trance states that human beings can enter, and talk about a little bit about remote viewing, and it's fun conversation, so stay tuned.
Superb.
But that said, from my experience doing journey work, memory recovery is a thing that is done in that.
Have you ever recovered a lost memory of
Absolutely,
yours?
yes,
Really?
for sure, yeah.
Whoa.
Because that's part of what's weird to me about that is how there have definitely been times when I'm in a trance state and the practitioner I would be working with would probably say that it's the spirits they've called in that are actually doing the work, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
whether it's the shaman or it's the spirits or whatever, it's somebody present in that ceremony understands how to navigate you to the memories versus to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or whether they're actual physical body memories or they're past life memories or they're memories from a state that's non-physical or something like that, you know what I mean?
It's so cool to me, the idea that there's almost a map of all these different mental states or out-of-body type states that you go into, and people kind of figured out how to just travel around in them. They have some kind of map, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, they have the navigational ability to get you into that state of consciousness where you can actually revisit an experience you've had in the past. Or be we need to, visit this other experience. I mean, it just really, it really blew my mind how, I was able to, while in trance state, was able to revisit memories that I, before that, would not have, I think, had any conscious memory of, but then revisit them as if they had just happened kind of thing.
Wow.
As an example, I went into my first, big session wanting to kind of talk about and deal with some old trauma from one of my mentors back in the day, right? And it turned out before I was able to visit those memories with him, I apparently had to visit some earlier memories, and it actually had to do with my third grade teacher that I remember thinking really
back.
hated me. Yeah. And so it's my memory was always just this lady had it out for me. She hated me. She just really wanted to make my life hell. And I actually ended up leaving halfway through the school year, and my mom homeschooled me the rest of the year because I was just screw this lady. I can't do this, right? And
I
then
never knew that, huh?
Yeah. And so then I hung out at home and just pretty much studied Egyptian mythology and history with my mom for the rest of the year, and it was tight.
Yeah.
And so it literally brought me back to it was, not a a memory of interest to me at that point at all, but that was where I ended up, was in that third grade classroom, and I'm literally like sitting there like looking around, and like all the other kids are heads down working on whatever. Whoa. And I'm just like spacing out, not working on whatever I'm supposed to be working on. And I look over at the teacher who's working at her desk doing whatever she's doing, and I'm just like immediately aware through my, at that point, current perspective of just like, dang, like this lady is totally miserable. Her life sucks. She hates everything about her life. You know what I mean? And it was like this full reframing of that memory, where instead of being like, oh, like, you know, she was a total jerk and had it out for me, it was just like, no, her life sucked and she was just a jerk in general, you know. And it was just like, it was really cool how useful that was to me, to be able to go back to this memory and reframe it in what I would see as a more realistic perspective, you know, that's like less personal and more compassionate to that person, I guess, too, you know. But that wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't like revisiting that memory on some objective level, is my assumption towards that, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was other stuff like that too. But then also mixed into these like levels of this experience was a bunch of stuff that definitely was not memories from this life. You know, like that same session, I had memories of like walking through a field of buffalo towards a mountain, and like, you know, wearing furs and stuff like that, you know. And like the shaman I was working with would have called that a past life memory, but it's like, who knows really? With any of that stuff. Yeah, but it was really interesting, and that memory was just as vivid as the third grade classroom memory, you know.
Does it look like, what does it look like? Do you see it? Is it more of like a feeling or more of a visual thing?
I've done group sessions like that too, and that's always something I find interesting, is how different people's experiences tend to be when we're talking about them afterwards, where some people do describe like a more visual experience or like a more auditory experience, you know. I've definitely had aspects that were very visual, but it's more in my body is how I would describe it, with like more sensory, I guess. You know, just like a memory, just like if you're going to close your eyes right now and think about something you did yesterday or this morning or whatever.
It's a mix of senses.
Yeah, it's a mix of, or at least a mix of perceived senses. But yeah, it literally feels like a memory, you know. And like, I mean, because you've done some of that like somatic therapy stuff, right? Like, is that like, I would assume you've probably experienced something similar doing that, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's slightly different. It's less like visualization. I've always done it like with my eyes open, so maybe if I closed my eyes and kind of got into the zone, I think there's a good chance I would go into kind of what you were describing, I would guess, because it does feel really trance-like and cathartic. And it was strange, like for me, whenever I did that somatic stuff, I would enter into the trance state a lot faster than you would think. Like there's always a moment that it just kind of clicks, and then you can feel your muscles like doing this twitch thing.
I feel like I've experienced a very similar thing with the journey work too. Yeah, where you can like feel when your body clicks into that state. Like,
and even like sleep paralysis and
that is kind of similar, huh?
You get into this like every time I've done it, there's this buzz feeling that you have to focus on, and then
and you kind of feel like you're floating and sinking at the same time. Like,
and once you focus enough on the buzz, you click into place, and then you can go around and get out of your body and do all that stuff. So
no, I fully relate to that. Yeah,
all of these things are just, I don't know. People forget that they're just a part of human life.
Yeah, I think it's been a part of human experience forever.
Everyone just goes around to the grocery store and all that, just pretending like people can't like astral project and relive past lives or whatever that actually is. But you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of swept under the rug, or people don't like to think about it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know, for real. Going back to the UFO topic a little bit, through my experiences and what I've heard from other people's experiences, like it's fully apparent to me that we are absolutely capable of exploring the universe outside of our bodies. And so why the heck do we need to develop spaceships to do that? And I would assume that, that even if it is like extraterrestrial life on another planet somewhere out there in space, that they probably have that same capability.
Probably, I would think so.
Like it seems to be like, I mean, it's a big assumption, but I'm feeling willing to assume
Yeah, I've heard stories of people going, like, literally flying into space during, like, lucid dreams or, like, astral projection or out-of-body experiences, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, people have gone to space and
Remote
stuff.
viewing.
Yeah, remote viewing. And, oh my God. Okay. This off topic, but basically there was a crew of people who remote viewed Saddam Hussein's hiding spot, his little cave thing.
I think that Uri Geller might have been one of those dudes doing that. Yeah.
And I can't remember the details, but
he was literally describing the vehicles and the weapons in there. Yeah.
And I remember they were like, there's a small box like next to his bed filled with all of this like specific stuff, and they never obviously were able to check up on it. But then years later, all like photos and stuff came out, and they were like, I think we saw his little bunker and his little like cave thing he was in. Anyway, I've heard tell, with a grain of salt, of course, but people who are really into remote viewing, they try to look inside of like celebrities' houses, but they can't. There's like some kind of barrier that prevents them from going into the houses.
Of course they would have figured out the tech to be able to block out remote viewing.
Same with
half the population doesn't even believe that's real.
I know. Same with Area 51 or like Sandia Labs too. People have tried to go in there, and it's the same barrier around those bases that celebrities have.
Cool.
I know, it's kind of I want to know what they know.
I mean, the government spent billions of dollars on psi research, and they have put a lot of resources into learning about that stuff. And like nowadays, when it comes up, it's like always just kind of swept under the rug as this like, oh, they didn't really find much, or they didn't go anywhere. But it's like, all that stuff is like you can look at any of that like literature through like Freedom of Information Act stuff at this point, and there was a ton of data they collected on that stuff, and it wasn't just like they tried it for a minute and then gave up. It was like they did it for years, like put so much like resources into researching that stuff, and it's like, it really seems like they stopped researching it because they couldn't weaponize it more than, like they definitely found a bunch of interesting stuff, but then weren't just going to be like, oh, well, this didn't give us an advantage over the enemy, but check out, check out the fact that maybe everything we think we know is wrong. Like,
exactly, There's probably some CIA guy I thought this was going to be like the movie Scanners, and I could explode people's brains.
No, that's
pull the plug
exactly
on it.
The type of shit they were looking for. You've probably heard of Chris Bledsoe.
No.
Before? No. His whole thing is really interesting, and he was literally on payroll with the federal government doing remote viewing in I want to say like the 60s or something, or 70s. And so he was literally like getting paid to like spy on the Russians, basically, like as an astral projector. And
why do I feel like the Russians would just have this floating astral like guard, just a bunch of buff Russian dudes on the astral plane? They're like waiting for him to show up, and they just start flying after him. It's like, come here.
They've figured out their own astral projection blocking, but it's actually just a bunch of Russian dudes that are also good at astral projection and just thug him out of there. But so like all that stuff you see on like Stranger Things, where they're like putting her in the flotation tank and like having her try to spy on specific people and stuff. Bledsoe wasn't the only one involved in this work and these experiments and stuff, but he's just like a major name for that, and he's very open about his experiences with it, so he's the one we know. But they did a lot of like tests with stuff where they're like, okay, like, go see how far in this direction you can go see if, and he was doing like amazing stuff, like having a dude who's like in Sweden or something spinning a color wheel, and then he's like accurately telling them what color it's going to land on before it even actually lands there halfway across the planet, and like getting it every single time. But one of the stories he tells is that like about a time that they were basically having him like fly around the moon in that state. And
Chris, why don't you go fly around the moon really quick?
Yeah, go tell me what you see on the other side of the moon, eh? So he's like cruising around the dark side of the moon, and he sees buildings. He says there's even like humanoids, like he was describing, I think, like, if I remember correctly, it was like naked humanoids that almost seemed like they were like farming or something, like doing some sort of work like out there on the surface of the moon. He like flies in closer to get a better look, and they all start looking up at him and pointing at him, getting each other's attention, and like they could like see him type of thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so I think even he's saying like, I don't think there's actually buildings on the other side of the moon from us, but like that's what I saw in the experience, and I think sometimes those experiences are more interpretive like that too. I think there was one where he was like, what he actually saw in his experience was like cups of water or like goblets or something like that, and then the thing that he was viewing turned out to be like swimming pools or bathtubs or something like that, you know, but they were like vessels of liquid, you know, and so sometimes it's like, it seems like it's not actually like,
get the gist across, but it's
like symbolic information rather than like direct, like, okay, here's a picture of what's going on inside of that place or something. And so
the moon story is so cool.
I know, isn't that so weird though? It's like, yeah,
he's up there.
Yeah, but it totally like spurs questions in my head about like, it's like, what if that's what all UFOs are? It's like people or whoever astral projecting, and we're like seeing some aspect of that, you know, part of them that for some reason becomes either becomes like visually accessible to us, or we're becoming aware of it through other senses and then interpreting it as a visual phenomenon. Like,
just somehow casts like a shadow on our world or distorts our world in
it distorts
some way.
something that we end up being able to perceive somehow. And
this is the outro now to Liam's interview. So thank you, Liam.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a really good conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it again sometime.
Fun times.
Yeah.
that past memory regression stuff was really cool.